Good morning, and welcome again to the study of the book of Proverbs. We are in the third lesson. The first lesson, we talked about the fear of the Lord as the beginning of wisdom. And in the second lesson, we talked about the role of the parents, how important it is for the children to be taught by the parents and to learn the lessons of life. And so today, we're going to look at the folly of fools. Before we begin, I want to say that I hope you've had a good week. Looks like maybe this week is going to be the breaking point of the hot temperatures, and so the next few weeks should be more enjoyable. I pray that you have had a safe week from the virus and from the struggles of life, but if not, I know that you've had the peace from the Lord to help you get through it. Would you pray with me? Dear Lord, we come again in our study, and we honor you for the wealth of knowledge that you have shared with us. But we know that your ways are so far above our ways, and so we search for your wisdom, we search for your way of life. We ask that you bless this lesson today. We ask that you bless all those that hear it. May we all learn something today of your ways and be able to put them into our life. Thank you for all that you do. We ask your blessings on our nation. Help us to be who we need to be. We thank you for the many people, the doctors, the nurses, and the struggles that they have and have had now for many months. And we ask that you protect them, give them strength and endurance. Father, we just are honored that you love us the way that you do, and even though we are but dust. So we bow before you and we give you all these things in the name of Jesus. Amen. The folly of fools. If you look up the definition of a fool in the dictionary, you might come up with something like this. It's a person who lacks judgment or sense. And if you looked for synonyms, there is a whole list of synonyms. Some of them might be silly, lack of intelligence, and the list is really quite long. But the Bible has a little bit different twist to the definition of a fool. It has a little tighter focus, you might say. And it's this. The Bible's point is that a fool is one who acts contrary to sound wisdom in his moral judgments. And it's also one who prefers trifling and temporary pleasures to the service and the devotion of God. It turns out that people who make wrong decisions sometimes can be silly and have maybe a lack of intelligence. That's really not the case. And I want to give us start with two examples, one from the Old Testament and one from the New, about what is identified in the Bible as somebody who is acting foolish. And you'll see that they're not necessarily lacking of intelligence. They're just making wrong decisions at a particular point in time. This must be pretty important in the Bible, because in the Bible, if you look up the word fool, it is mentioned 186 times, either the word fool or foolish. And turns out 145 of those are in the Old Testament, and over half of those are found in this book that we're studying. It makes me think that maybe Solomon was dealing with something with the nation of Israel that needed to be addressed, and so this topic of being a fool, of making wrong decisions at a certain point in time, is very important. 76 Proverbs. 41 times it's mentioned in the New Testament. Let's look at these two examples. Let me introduce you to Nabal. Nabal in the Old Testament, we find out that he is a very rich person. He has 3,000 sheep and 1,000 goats. and the story takes place toward the south end of the Dead Sea. We find out that Nabal is a harsh person, and he's also evil. The story is found in 1 Samuel 20:25. Turns out Nabal has a group of shepherds, and they're out taking care of their sheep, their goats. And David has some sheep and some goats in this particular area as well, and the shepherds are all together, and their flocks are in the same general area. And we find out that David's shepherds have helped those shepherds of Nabal. And it says that he helped guard them, he helped protect them, he didn't insult their shepherds, and David's shepherds didn't steal from them. And so he acted very upright toward Nabal's shepherds. And so, evidently, there is some kind of festival. It doesn't say what it was, which one it was. Maybe one of the shepherds is going to have a birthday. I don't know. Anyway, they were running a little short on food. So David told 10 of his men, go to Nabal and tell him about all the things that you had done to protect his flocks and his shepherds. And if he has any food that's extra, have him to send it for this particular festival. And so they go and they see Nabal, they tell him the story, said, we have protected your people, we've not insulted them, we have shepherded and built a wall around your flock, and not only that, we didn't steal from them. And Nabal turns around and says, who is David? And who is this Jesse? You get nothing from me. Well, this makes David very upset, and he tells his servants, his shepherds, strap on your swords, we're going to make this thing right. Now, at the same time, back at Nabal's headquarters, one of the shepherds goes to Nabal's wife, whose name is Abigail. What we know about Abigail is that she is very beautiful, and the Bible says that she is intelligent. The shepherd tells Abigail what's going on and how Nabal acted, and it says that he won't even listen to us. And this man calls Nabal worthless even to Abigail's face. And he says he is living up to his name, which is foolish. When Abigail hears this story, she quickly puts together a bunch of food, puts it on donkeys. There were 200 loaves of bread, 2 jugs of wine, 3 sheep that had been slaughtered and prepared for a meal. There was grain, fruits, and cakes. And she takes all of that, loads them up, and goes and intercepts David on his way to meet with Nabal. And she falls on the ground and kneels before David, and she says something that's like, remember in our study with Daniel in his great prayer that he had when he talked about all the sins of Israel, but he said, I am part of the problem? That's what Abigail does here. Watch this. She says to David, on me alone is the blame. Well, that's not really right, but she is taking the blame for everything that has happened. And she says, don't pay attention to this worthless man, for he's living up to his name, and his name is Nabal, and that means foolish. David accepts this, and he says, you have kept me from shedding blood, so go in peace. Abigail goes back home. Nabal is having a feast. He's drunk. And she says nothing to him until the next morning. And then she explains everything to him. And when she does, and he kind of comes to his senses, I guess, it says his heart became as stone. And 10 days later, he dies. You see, Nabal didn't return the kindness shown to his men. Now, the New Testament story I want to leave you with is a picture of a wedding scene. And here's the people walking through the streets, and they're picking up all the people to go to the wedding feast. As I was doing some research for this, I ran across a book. I didn't get to read it all, but here's some excerpts from it. And this book is written by Richard Booker, and it talks about what brides and grooms and the activity of a wedding was all like back during Jesus' time. And here's what it says. First, there's a marriage contract that is presented to the intended bride and to her father. And the young man pours a cup of wine for his beloved and waits to see if she will drink it. This is kind of like our engagement. It says, this cup represents a blood covenant. And if she drinks the wine, she is accepting the proposal and they are betrothed. At that point, the young man then gives gifts to his beloved and takes his leave. But before leaving, the young man announces, I'm going to prepare a place for you. And he says, and I will return for you when it is time, when it is ready, when the place that I'm going to have for us to live is ready. And the young woman then has to wait for him to return and to bring her to the wedding. He's not allowed to skimp on the work and has to get his father's approval before he can consider it ready for his bride. Turns out, it says maybe the groom might be a little bit anxious, and before everything is totally finished, he says, well, let's go now. And father says, no, it's not perfect yet. You have to make it perfect. And it says, if you ask the date of the wedding, the groom would reply, only my father knows. Does any of this sound familiar? Kind of does, doesn't it? So the day of the wedding, the word is out and everyone gets ready. And when the groom and his friends get close to the bride's house, what happens is they start progressing through the city, picking up all of the guests. And as they get close to the bride's house, the sheep's horn or the ram's horn is blown. And it's a sign for the bride to get ready. And then he collects his bride and goes to the prepared place for the wedding. So that's the scene now that we're going to have here with this parable. And you know the story about the 5 foolish bridesmaids and the 5 wise bridesmaids. And they have their oils and they're waiting, and they have their lamps trimmed, and they wait and they wait and they wait, and pretty soon it gets toward midnight, and half of them, their lamps go out because they've used up all their oil. And then the sound of here comes the groom, the ram's horn is blown, and the 5 wise virgins, they trim their lamps, they have a flask full of oil, and the other ladies, they don't have enough oil, they ask for it. The ladies who have the oil say, no, you'll have to go get your own, we don't have enough to share. The 5 wise ladies, the young virgins, they go into the wedding. The other 5, the foolish ones, they go look for oil. By the time they get it and come back, the door is closed. And we find out that the foolish bridesmaids failed to fully prepare. Now, both of these instances are called examples of foolish decisions. And so one from the old, one from the new. There's several. I chose these 2. When I hear a story like this or a parable, I always think about, well, what if? What if? What if it turned out to be different? Hold it, I'm pushing the wrong buttons. Here we go. What if? What if Nabal had said, thanks for helping my shepherds. I've been blessed, so here's my contribution to your festival. That wouldn't have taken much to do that. The whole story would have changed. And the 5 foolish bridesmaids, what would happen if while they were preparing, somebody said, you know, what happens if this groom is slow in getting ready and takes a lot of time? You know how men are. We better prepare for a long night. Both of these stories would turn out not to be foolish stories. So, with that in mind, let's look at some of the traits of a fool. And the reason why we want to do this is simply because as we see maybe some of these traits starting to creep into the situations in our own lives, we can recognize it, step away from it, and have it turn out like the what if and not like the story that we've just been through. One of the traits of a fool is he trusts in himself. And here's the proverb. It says that the way of a fool is right in his own mind. He always thinks he's doing exactly what needs to be done at the time, and you can't convince him otherwise, and that is exactly what is going through his mind. Another proverb along the same line is, he who trusts in his own heart is a fool, but he who walks wisely will be delivered. And then finally, a third proverb, and we want to spend some time here, is where there is no guidance, people fall. But in the abundance of counselors, there's victory. Now, I got to thinking about this particular verse and this particular lesson, and I thought, in the abundance of counselors, there is victory. Maybe I need some help in this. So, I have asked a friend of mine, Brian Polly, to come and help us, and specifically because of, hi Brian, hey brother. Specifically because of the kind of job that he has and the specific way that you look for people. Give us a quick overview of your job.
Well, and I'm really super thankful to be in this room with somebody that I'm not related to. So I'm thankful for the opportunity. I'm also really thankful that for the setup that you gave me, Garth, because I was afraid that you were asking me to come here to talk exclusively about the traits of a fool for other potential reasons.
I see. No. And the reason why that's not true is because we find out in 1 Corinthians, Paul says, even the best wisdom of man is foolish before God. So I thought maybe I might get a little help in keeping each other out of trouble up here.
Fair enough. All right. Well, we'll see how that works out. But yeah, this interesting proverb that honestly, until we looked at this together, I hadn't really paid that much attention to it. But where there is no guidance, people fall, but in an abundance of counselors, there is victory. You know, as you mentioned, my job for pretty much 30-something years now has been in sales and sales management. I know you were in sales and marketing, so we kind of have somewhat similar backgrounds, so you probably know more about this than I do. But, you know, for the last several years, I've been focused on helping salespeople and especially leaders of salespeople. So I've spent a lot of time either evaluating leaders, sales leaders, or in some cases even hiring sales leaders. And some interesting parallels with what this talks about here, because, you know, a lot of times companies will promote their best salespeople and make them sales managers, so leading other salespeople, and then they scratch their heads why that doesn't always work out all that great. Because
you know, we used to call that you lose twice when that happens. You've just lost a good salesman and you've made a lousy manager.
That's true, because some of the things that make a seller successful are not necessarily what makes you a great leader of people. Right. But I thought about that as we were looking at this, and you know, if we go to this next visual, you know, the idea here that what is it that makes somebody who's going to be a good counselor, or a mentor, or a leader? First is, it's not about me. It's about the people I'm trying to help. So this notion of being passionate for the success of the individual or the company, that's one of the things that I've seen happen over and over again, is when we're really good at taking ourselves out of the equation and putting others in the lead, that makes for a really good counselor, a really good coach.
Okay.
Second thing is it takes time and energy in order to be good at it. It takes a lot of work, and you got to pour yourself into that. So it's not necessarily about what you get out of it, it's what you pour into it. And again, this is where it is helpful to have some background in selling, when we're talking about sales management at least, but it's true for a counselor as well. You need to come from a position of knowledge. In order to impart wisdom, you need to have some knowledge in order to be good at it.
This be kind of good for a parent too?
All of this is good for a parent, a leader, a mentor, you know, whatever. And, you know, and the idea of being willing to go against the grain, express a different opinion than perhaps what conventional wisdom is. Just because everybody says you should be doing that, that doesn't necessarily mean to be a good counselor, you need to be willing to go against the grain. And that's especially true in our lives of faith. Because, man, if prevailing wisdom says we should be going this way, we should be questioning that every single time, and especially when we're talking about our kids or our brothers and sisters in faith.
You know, I heard a comment one time, and I've keep it written down so I can remember it, and that is that real progress occurs when there is a healthy spirit of discontent. Seems like you really can't change anything unless you're just discontent with the way things are. You're not happy with things are, and you want to change them, but you have a healthy spirit about it.
Right.
Now, going on in this country right now, there's a lot of differing opinions and different people who have different ideas, but I think the one thing that we're missing right now is a healthy spirit of discontent. And so this is so important, is this concept of the counselor. And so talk to us about this goal.
And this bottom line for all of this is so, you know, because as I was preparing and thinking about this focus on the traits of a fool, you know, a fool is somebody who doesn't correct foolish behavior, right? It's kind of like, if you just keep doing foolish things, then sooner or later you're going to be a fool.
Yeah.
So, you know, the point here for helping people, for being a counselor or a mentor or a leader of people, the goal really needs to be help them make better decisions, help them avoid pitfalls that in many cases I've done myself.
Yeah.
And as I think about this, most of my examples are about dumb things I've done.
Yeah.
And hopefully we learn from it and move on.
You know, I looked at all of these: passion for success, willing to support people, have an established area of success, and willing to express a differing opinion. You apply all those to the Lord, and that's why He's such a great counselor for us. He has a passion for our success. If God is for us, who can be against us, right?
That's right.
Willing to support us with time and energy, cast your care upon Him because He cares for us. Nicodemus, I'm reminded of what Nicodemus said when he came to Jesus. He said, nobody can do the things you do unless God is with him. I mean, nobody has the area of expertise that he does, and so it makes him an ideal counselor, and he's certainly willing to express a differing opinion. And I'm always amazed at that verse every time I read it, at the gracious words that were falling from his lips. The differing opinion that he brought, but it was so gracious that people would go for days without anything to eat, just to hear what he had to say.
I can't help, when you say that, I can't help but think about how they were amazed because he spoke with authority, not like the scribes and Pharisees.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that may have been a big part of it, right? It was the how confident he was in what he was saying.
Now, I have to ask you, is this the time that we talk about that thing that we don't want to talk about?
Hang on. We don't want to talk about it.
Talk about it.
We're going to talk about it, but not yet.
But not yet.
Not yet.
All right.
Coming up.
Okay.
So if that first section on the traits of a fool was about, it's all about me.
Yeah.
This next section is all about forgetting an important fundamental fact of biology, Garth. We are, and stop me if you've heard this one, we are created with 2 ears and 1 mouth, with the expectation that we will use them in that proportion.
We kind of get it backwards.
We get it backwards, and especially a fool gets it backwards, because according to Proverbs 18:2, the Proverbs writer reminds us that a fool does not delight in understanding, but only in revealing his own mind.
You know, I think about Job's friends. You know, the best thing that they did, these 3 friends that come to visit Job doesn't understand what's going on. He's in agony. He's lost part of his family. And they come, and the best thing that they did was to sit with him for 7 days and not say a word. When they started talking, They didn't know what they were talking about. They thought they did. They said, your trouble is because you've done something bad. Even your kids, the reason what happened to them, they must have transgressed, and that's their punishment. And all of this came out, and finally God told the three friends, you need to do what Job said. And so it's pervasive in our lifetime, I'm afraid.
Well, and you know, Proverbs 10:19 talks about when there are many words, transgression is unavoidable, but he who restrains his lips is wise.
Yeah.
It can be so difficult for us to just not say what immediately comes first thing off of our lips. But if we're wise, we learn to
Listen.
take a beat.
Yeah.
Right? Listen, 2 ears, 1 mouth. Use it in that proportion, and not just fly off.
Now, is this where we?
I think now you can ask
Now
the
we
question.
talk about it?
Now we can talk about that.
I
thing
don't
that
really
we don't
want to talk about this. Can I be excused?
No. You're not leaving me up here.
All right. So here's the question. I'll ask the question. You've got the answer.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Why don't men ask for directions when they're lost? You ever heard that?
Not today, and I will say it has somewhat diminished in an era of GPS on my phone.
I see.
But yes, I have been guilty of this. Why are we so disinclined to ask for directions, or I might add, use instruction?
I have an example, and it's embarrassing, but I'll tell it.
Okay, better you than me.
This is in Arizona. We've been invited to the Carter's house for the evening with another couple. Mm-hmm. I'm in the front seat driving. Zandra's in the front seat as well. This other couple's there. We're going to the Carter's house. Now, on the way, Zandra says, you just missed the turn. To which I said, I know where they live. And I proceeded to drive where they used to live. And the question was, now, why did you do that? And I guess it's because I wanted to see that they hadn't moved back. I don't know. Anyway, when we got through, the front seat was, let's say, quiet.
Yeah.
There's giggles in the back seat, but the front seat is quiet. Sometimes the misery of others is not altogether unpleasant. So,
I'd like to say we learned from that, but I'm not always sure that I have.
yeah.
Given that I keep repeating it from time to time. But yeah, I mean, you know, to some extent, personally, I see that I'm kind of hardwired. I've had plenty of examples of that in my life, of the same kind of thing, and I feel like I should be able to just navigate there based on memory. Or I should be able to put together this IKEA bookcase that has no actual instructions, but maybe visuals that are supposed to be close to the instructions. I should not need that.
Yeah.
But in fact, I do, and I find out and have to learn the hard way every single time.
I looked this up on the internet, and we know that everything on the internet is true. Absolutely. That says that men don't ask for directions because, and I'm mindful of what Daniel Boone said one time. They said, were you ever lost? He said, I was never lost, but I was confused for about 3 days one time, and that's about what happens. And, you know, we learn by doing. Yes. Not by being told. It seems like that's the male way. And we have this independence and a pride, and pride's going to be the topic for next week. And we want to solve the puzzle ourselves and just leave, and it's a contest, and time is no issue now. And so we drive around and we don't ask for, well, it kind of falls into this topic of traits of a fool, doesn't it?
It sure does.
Yeah.
It sure does. So it's all about me. I don't listen very well, which then leads to, oftentimes, being impulsive and hostile about it.
Yes.
So not only do I not listen and I want to do what I want to do, but I kind of jump in and then I fly off the handle if it doesn't go. So Proverbs 14:29 talks about he who is slow to anger has great understanding, but he who is quick-tempered exalts folly.
Yeah. I've seen in the work world, managers who fly off the handle at the least little thing at their employees, especially in front of their peers or whatever. I have found out And I've seen that those employees then will back off on taking chances because they do not want to have that experience of being embarrassed, and they will do a lesser amount just to make sure that they get that right. And so therefore they don't take risk. They don't do things that would have worked out. And they're more like the man that was given the one talent, and they just kind of come back and don't do much. And as it turns out, this impulsive and hostile attitude it disrupts the whole demeanor of who you're talking to.
And it's a miserable way to live.
Yes.
I mean, that's true for all of this, is that life could be so much better if I didn't do foolish things, if I just gave it a minute and I didn't just react to the first thing that jumps out at me. And we have this is the amazing thing about the Bible, that one of the truly great proofs, I believe, for the factual nature of the Bible, Garth, is matter of fact, we rarely get the good side of characters. We almost exclusively get the bad side.
Yeah.
So yes, Peter is an amazing figure of faith, and he deserves all of the praise that he gets, but we also get some amazing images of Peter in this impulsive and impetuous behavior. You can think of all kinds, the Transfiguration, while Moses and Elijah are standing there before them, what does he say? Let's build a tent.
Yeah.
Let's build a couple of tents, because he wants to memorialize this and make a big thing. So that's the first thing he thinks about, not how do I know that that's Moses and Elijah, because that's what I'd think about. Yeah. And then in the Garden of Gethsemane, when they come to arrest him, what's his reaction? I'm going to cut off the ear of who? The high priest's servant.
And he probably wasn't working for the ear.
Probably not. And so we have these images of what not to do, and yet in the end, Christ welcomes him back. Yeah. And it's clear that Peter learned from that over time. Not perfect, because none of us are perfect. There's only one perfect. But it's controlling ourselves in this way is vitally important, and because the only one that can fix it is me.
Okay, all right.
So
if we kind of step through these, first he trusts in himself, right? Yep. And then he won't listen to instructions. The fool won't. And he's a talker, not a listener. And reaction winds up being hostile and impulsive. And now one more thing, and that is sports. All of a sudden, here's sports, right? It says, doing wickedness is like sport to a fool, and so is wisdom to a man of understanding. Now, you like golf, don't you? I understand.
Love golf. Love golf. Not good at it, but I love it.
Yes, okay. The contrast here is you've got two different ways of life. Number one is doing wickedness, and wisdom and doing things the right way. And he said both of these wind up, it's like a sport. So why do you play golf?
Because I like punishing myself? No, the thing I love about golf is that I get to go out and play around on grass that I didn't have to cut.
I see.
And it's usually more beautiful than anything I could ever probably do on my own. I love the fact that usually there's different kinds of grass, and I'm usually over here in the tall stuff, but it's almost always a beautiful setting, and it's just a great way to spend an afternoon.
And you enjoy it, and all it takes.
Even if I don't play great, I love it.
One good shot will bring you back.
That's
right?
Every time.
Yeah.
Just need one.
Look here, it says, doing wickedness is like sport to a fool. Some of the things that you see on TV about, the way that people act, that when they're doing sport things like this, there's excitement. And when robbers, and I have an example here of a bank robber, for example, there's excitement of doing that. And it brings this rush, I guess, to the fool. But also, on the flip side of that is that when you accomplish something and it's something good, it brings the same kind of rush to you. And so you don't have to do wickedness to get that same kind of response. And the picture I chose for that is Mission Control in Houston. Now, when they have one of their missions down there, and we haven't had one in a long time, I know, but so much preparation, years of preparation go into this. And the shot takes off, they do whatever they're going to do in space, they come back, and when they splash down and the whole mission is a success, Mission Control erupts. I mean, it is a sport to the fullest, I guess is the best way to say it. And so what Proverbs is saying is that wisdom, properly done, brings that same kind of rush. And so you don't have to do bad to get this to happen to you. Do things that are wise. Now, in Proverbs, in the first chapter, right after talking about the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and that parents are the ones that need to teach their children, here's what they said. What is said? It starts in verse 11 or 10. If my son, if sinners entice you, don't consent. If they say, come with us, let us lie in wait for blood. Let us ambush the innocent without cause. Let us swallow them like alive in Sheol, even whole as those who go down to the pit. We'll find all kinds of precious wealth. We'll fill our houses with spoil. Throw in your lot with us, and we will have one purse. My son, do not walk in the way with them. Keep your feet from their path, for their feet run to evil, and they hasten to shed blood. Indeed, it is useless to spread the baited net in sight of any bird. You just won't catch a bird when you're sitting there baiting a trap. But they lie in wait for their own blood. So what they think they're doing in stealing or taking something from somebody else, it says they are waiting for their own blood and they ambush their own lives. I heard somebody say they pick their own pocket. They pick their own pocket. It says, so are the ways of everyone who gains by violence. It takes away the life of its possessors. Okay, final trait for a fool.
All right, so it's all about us. We're not good at we're not good at listening. We're impetuous. It causes us to think committing evil is a sport, and we get a rush out of that. Finally, after all of that, then we're not really, when the fool is not able to be disciplined, right? You just can't. You can't fix it for him. A prudent man, according to Proverbs 27:12, a prudent man sees evil and hides himself. The naive proceed and pay the penalty.
Yeah. I'm sure you saw on TV, as all of us did many times, every time there's a hurricane to the extent of Katrina or Laura, people are told to leave. And you have scenes like that. Where everybody, well, not everybody, but most everybody is leaving the town. And I saw the other night an interview of this lady and her daughter. They're being interviewed, and they had chosen to stay. And in the background is nothing but a pile of rubbish because their house has been totally destroyed. They were safe, but it was totally destroyed. And they were interviewing this lady, and they were asking her, why didn't you leave? And she kept saying, it's because we didn't think it was going to be that bad. Now, how much information does it take to know that it's going to be bad? Well, the interview kept going on, and finally the interview was over, and it was as if they were winding down. The young girl, and she was probably an older teenager, just chimed in, and it's as if they didn't even ask her. She just chimed in and she said, and next time they tell us, we're leaving. I mean, she had had enough of this foolishness. And so it is so difficult to discipline some people, but other people, they pick up on it and they learn from it. Okay. So I have a few slides here. And it deals with foolishness, and I'm sad to say it is entitled Why Women Live Longer Than Men. And you've probably seen some of these working underneath his car being held up by two-by-fours.
That makes complete sense, using
Yes.
two-by-fours.
What about this one? Changing light bulbs by standing on the doors.
I think I've done that one.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I think I have.
Did you learn?
Well, I mean, I have both legs.
So far, okay.
yeah.
Here's one. If you look real closely at this picture, there is a third tiger in the back reaching his paw through. He probably has not been fed, whereas hopefully the others have. Either that or maybe they have dosed him with Tylenol PM, I don't know. Anyway, and the fourth picture is, do men really do these things? Maybe that's why men don't live as long as women. Okay.
I'm afraid you're right.
All right, we're wrapping up now. We have to do some memory work, and it comes from Proverbs 3, and it's this: trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will direct your paths. If you don't have that verse memorized, those two verses memorized, please do it. They will help you through your life, and they will be a constant source of dealing with situations. Trust in the Lord, and there's two phrases here that are extremely important, and it is with all your heart and all your ways. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and don't lean on your understanding, and in all your ways. That means the little things of life as well as the big things of life. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will direct your paths. Brian, let's summarize this real quickly. Foolishness, according to the Bible, is just not making wise decisions at the time with the data that you have. And we've had examples of that, and we've seen traits of the fool. And so that is what Bible is talking about when it says foolishness.
Yeah, you know, when I was reading that, Garth, I thought of a line of one of my favorite songs that says, the line is, if you choose not to decide, you still have made a choice.
Yes. Wow.
Right? We have to inquire of God of what to do. And we need to be doing that regularly as part of our lives, which is kind of what that next point is talking about, right? Constantly searching for God's guidance.
Yeah.
You know, my dad, whenever I read the Proverbs, I remind myself that this is Solomon writing his sons with advice. So whenever I read Proverbs, I hear it in my dad's voice, as if he's saying that to me, or I try to hear it that way. It's such a terrific parenting guide because it is ancient. It's ancient writing to teenagers, is what it is. So, and then make sure that we're surrounding ourselves with wise people. The way to avoid foolishness is by focusing on wisdom and not associating with foolishness.
Very good. And
we tend to be driven to foolishness.
And the fourth and final point is recognize the evil schemes. This is what was said in chapter 1 of Proverbs. My son, if sinners entice you, don't do that. And it's recognize evil schemes, find out what's right, what's wrong, and then flee from them, run from them. And I leave you with one verse. That's Hebrews 5:14. It says, solid food is for the mature, who, because of practice, have had their senses trained to discern between good and evil. And that's what it takes, is sometimes you are like Peter and you make the wrong decisions, but you learn from them. And after a while, this maturity comes forth that you're looking for, and quote, hopefully we become wise, who because of practice have had their senses trained to discern between good and evil. Hope these thoughts have been useful to you. Thank you, Brian.
My pleasure. Thank you for the invitation.
Okay, come back next week, and the topic will be on pride. God bless.